So as you may have picked up on, our farmers or whatever controllers, they're trying to get rid of a lot of people. The Georgia Guidestones, which were blown up, had that little thing on it that said maintain humanity at 500,000, yada yada, all that stuff. And I used to think, like, why is it so important to them to get rid of a lot of people, like so many people? Like, that whole thing about using up the Earth's resources is a crock of shit. There's no fucking way. You could take almost the entire population of the U.S. and fit them in Texas. Everybody. There is no overcrowding. They try to get everybody in cities or communities. They don't like people living out on their own somewhere. So they like to jam them all together. And they tell you there's a scarcity issue, and you believe them because you're surrounded on all sides by people. And you think, oh wow, even if in your mind you can conceptualize that there's probably a lot more space out there, like countryside or whatever, the immediacy of being surrounded all the time hampers that thought, keeps you from thinking that way, or makes it harder for you to jump to that idea. It's all psychological, mind control bullshit that they've been mastering. But it's not so much that they need more space or they want more land. It's a rendering issue. Having this many different people, different points of attention of the consciousness that we share, causes a rendering issue for them. And what I mean by that is there's a concept in theoretical physics where if you're not looking at something, it's not there. If you're not in your house, it's not there. For the person in the house, it's there. And what it is, it's almost like if you ever played those like real big MMORPG video games. They don't render the whole place on some of them. I think of ones that used to do that, maybe Star Wars Galaxies, everywhere. But in any case, they don't render the entire world from the view of one player. They just kind of render what's around you. I think they use this in other games too. So that's theoretically, that's kind of what's happening here. Particles, when they're being observed, do not move. They don't move. They just stand still. And that's why when we look at stuff, it looks like solid. It stands still. And the idea is when we look away, it's just a jumble of crap, like snow on a TV screen. And this has been proven in an experiment where they had two particles done. I don't know if you've heard this whole experiment. I forget the guys that did it, but you can find all the information online. But they had these two like tubes, particle in each tube, right? And they noticed when they start the experiment, at some point, one particle would end up in the other tube, like one would jump into the other one. And they're like, that's kind of weird. Why is it doing that? So they didn't put a camera in there. What they did is they measured the space in each tube, the total space, so that they would see when the particle jumped out of the tube, it would be able to read and tell them that there was more space in the tube. Basically, that's how it was done. It was going to show the absence so they knew what time it moved into the other tube. So they can try to figure out how and why it was doing that. Well, when they put the measuring tool on the tubes, it didn't jump. It stayed where it was because the particle sensed it was being observed in some way. Even though it wasn't being looked at, just the measuring tool was enough to make it realize that it was being observed, and it didn't. It stayed still. So when you look at something, it stays solid, but when you're looking away, like if you're having a conversation with someone, they're looking at you, and they see you, you see them. But if you were to see behind you at that moment, it's just particles moving. It's like static, like on a TV or something, like when the TV goes out, it's just like a jumble of things. It's not solid. It's not a solid thing. They're seeing it because they're looking at you. Am I explaining this retarded? Yeah, probably. But the point is, that's a rendering kind of thing. Like, if you're not looking at it, it doesn't have to be there. So it only makes what you're looking at. If you're not looking at it, it's not there. What that says to me is they're trying to save power somehow, save energy by not rendering everything all the time. It's not a persistent world that's always here. Only what we can see of it is here. So I think maybe that ties in to the population thing, because the more points of attention they have to render, you know, the more people, the more of a tax it is on the system. And like how I've said, the system's breaking down, it's coming apart because of overuse, years of use. By cutting down on the population, they cut down on the points of attention that need to be rendered for. So it saves them rendering power. So what I think it is it's a way for them to try to save their tech, however, whatever that tech is, whether it's a spell or some kind of incantation or a device, whatever they're using to suck our loosh, to then transmute that into the energy that creates the world around us. And some of the things, it's breaking down because they've been using it too long, and that's why the beast is dying. That's why the veil is becoming porous. That's why you're seeing through it. You're starting to notice things you didn't see before. The biblical scales are being removed from the eyes because their tech is breaking down. So I think perhaps in an effort to save their method of transmutation, whatever that may be, to take the stress off it, they want to cut down on the people. And I think that's really what it is. Because it's not a resources issue. It's not a space issue. I think it's a rendering issue. Just like World of Warcraft video game. Like, if you have a lot of people in playing the game, it stresses out the system, it taxes the system, and everything runs slow, it runs shitty, and eventually it'll just overheat or break down. And much like World of Warcraft, I think we have instances in this world too. And what an instance is in a game, say there's like a major dragon with loot that everybody wants, right? Instead of like a bunch of people, like 50 different players in the game trying to kill this thing at once, you could go into an instance in which the game creates a different version of the same monster for different smaller groups of people to fight. These are instances. In the same way, I think we kind of have those things here. If you think about a cemetery, okay, and you think about the amount of people that die every day, those things should be 10 times the size, filled with ambulances or going in and out of them all the time, or people in there digging all the time. It should be one of the busiest places on earth, but they're not. In fact, you probably hardly ever see anyone being buried there. The only time you see a burial is if you attend like a funeral, right? And how is it that so many people can die every day? Isn't it like how many, like for a certain amount of seconds, I'm not going to say what it is because I don't remember, but it's one death every certain amount of seconds, right? Yet, I mean, growing up, I remember the cemeteries in my neighborhood, they never expanded. They're always the same. And it was rare that I ever saw anyone being buried. The only time I really saw something like that happen is if it was a burial that I was at. Just like in the game. There's like a cave that the dragon lives in, right? But when you go in the entrance of the cave, it makes a different version of the inside of the cave for you to fight the dragon, so that everybody's not trying to fight at the same time. It doesn't use up too much rendering power. Because if you think of all the people that die that would have to be buried in a cemetery, and that's even including cremation and all that stuff, people are just constantly dying, man. It's just a thing that happens. And these cemeteries are kind of like in the game where they have the dragon's cave. Every group that goes into it gets a different miniature version of that area. It's instanced. I haven't really gone too deep into the cemetery thing, but if someone wanted to do the math on it, I bet it would be shocking as far as how they just seem to maintain the same size. And you look at the number of people that die every day, there's some math, there's some floating kind of math that's not working out. And I don't even have to look into it too deeply to realize it's happening. That could be like an instance situation. From the outside, we all see it as a graveyard, all looks the same to everyone. But if you go into it, right, you go into your own version of it, just like in the video games. At any rate, this all points to the fact that there is some kind of rendering going on here, some kind of energy being used to show things that are in your view, you know. No, I don't think you're a simulation. Maybe the world, part of it might be, but you're not. They want you to think that. When I first saw the white Chinese guy, help me, oh, Elon Musk, when I first saw him come out and start talking about it, it's possible we're in a simulation. It's like right away I knew, okay, we're not in a fucking simulation. Once you kind of get how this place works, if you know that everything it presented to you is backwards, you can get your answers just by listening to the spokespeople for the system. But the area itself is definitely rendered somehow, using our power to do it, from sucking our energy. Like I said, I don't know what the method of transmutation is, but whatever it is, it's breaking down. And I think to try to help them not have the thing completely overheat and break down, they need less people here, because it's taken too much rendering power up. I mean, is that what's going on? I don't know. It's just something I thought of. That it sounds plausible, right? I mean, if you connect it to the particle science, and then look at the fact that there's no need to get rid of people other than just to be dickheads, and they're really intent on doing it, like they want to, you know, making sure everybody gets the thing, like they're in a race to get rid of a lot of people at once. The war in Ukraine, it's almost like they're desperate to, and the desperation comes from the fact that their technology, their shit is breaking down. So they think, oh, we get rid of people, it'll be less stress on it. They're gonna lose, like they've already lost basically. It might feel sometimes like they're really in control because all these bad things are happening. They're not doing any of this stuff from a position of strength. They're doing it from a position of weakness and desperation. You know, I've often described it as the beast is flailing on the ground, swinging its tentacles, just trying to hit anything it can while it goes down into the pit, you know? It's trying to take whatever it can with it. Because it's not about winning. It can't win at this point. It's about denying God, any of his children, to take as many souls as it can down with it. That's the name of the game for them. So all we have to do, we happy few, is just fucking keep our heads down, you know? That's it. Wait it out. It's our game to lose, really, at this point. You know what I mean? I'm not saying don't do anything. Do what you can. Do good things. I don't care what the Christians say. Do works. You know, do works. Well, actually, they say that. Some say, you know, the born again say don't do works. Don't do anything. Well, you know, I like to help out my neighborhood. Don't do it. Okay. I'm not gonna bag on them though. There's a lot more important stuff going on. But yeah, that's just a schizo thought I had. Putting things together, you know, with the instancing and the rendering, graveyards, particles, you know, the kind of stuff your average guy walks around here thinking about. Don't blame the teacher, blame the school.